Hey everybody, I know it's been a long time since I posted something on our 66-day challenge, but with everything that's been going on over the last week and it just did not feel right to post anything. Um, but today, being that it's Good Friday, I wanted just to kind of get something out. Uh, and before we even start, if we could just have a moment of silence followed by a moment of prayer for Pace and just his family. So if y'all would, just bow with me. God, I just pray for the family and tomorrow and for good weather. And we thank you for the body, the church body that you've given us. And I pray that we will be the arms and the feet of you. And I pray that you would just be present and there for all the families that are involved. God, we love you. In the midst of a hard time, it's hard to see you. Sometimes it can be. But God, I pray that you would walk through to the valley of the shadow of death with the family, and you would be there, and they would feel your presence, God. We ask for three things now as we enter into this time of discussion. We ask for your guidance, that you would guide our conversation. Number two, for your spirit, that your spirit would flow through even this technology that got through me. And thirdly, for understanding as we kind of dive in, not only for today, but just for the conversations in the future. So God, we pray all these things in your name. Amen and amen. Thank y'all so much. So just to kind of give an outline of where we're going to go, we're going to talk about the Holy Week today, right now, and then I want to post, we should already be done with 1 Corinthians. I think technically we're supposed to be on 2 Corinthians chapter 2. And so I'm going to get us all the way through 1 Corinthians today. I will post every chapter, one video per every chapter, just concluding up till today. But I want to start with this video with talking about the Holy Week. And what is the Holy Week? If you've been around church for a while, you know that typically you have Palm Sunday and Resurrection Sunday. There's two theories on this. Theory number one is that it truly was Palm Sunday, and that we have record of 4 days following Palm Sunday, with one day being silent until we get to Friday. So typically the theory anyways is Palm Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, silent Wednesday, where nothing is said, nothing is written out, Monday, Thursday, which is just another word we'll talk about in a second, and then Good Friday. So that's typically the way that people thought. That's traditional. There is also another view that is held by several people, more modern, I would say. It's kind of come up in the last maybe 100 years. People have begun to think this, that actually Palm Sunday was Palm Monday. And so instead of walking in on that Sunday, it would have actually been a day later on Monday, and then you don't have to deal with the silent Wednesday. So then you have Palm Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, silent Saturday, Resurrection Sunday. So those two views are the way that many people believe that we went. Now, I don't know which one I believe. I'll probably stick to traditional leaning on that but I don't know. So I'm still up in that. Haven't studied it enough to be able to confidently say I believe one or the other. But typically, I tend to stick with things that's been in belief longer. So that would probably be where I would go. It would be Palm Sunday and then Silent Wednesday. But if you know, in your Gospels, you have the triumphal entry. It's in Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 19, and John chapter 12. And in all of those, what you'll find is they are all about midway least to latter, 3/5 of the Gospels make up the last week of Jesus' life. So this is a whole lot of Gospel writing went to just 1 week of Jesus' life. If you remember, John actually writes in his Gospel, he says, if everything Jesus did was recorded, there would not be enough paper in the world to record it all. And I think that's just a way of John saying, look, I spent half my Gospel, because he does. John does spend about half of his Gospel writing about the last week of Jesus' life. So if he spent, that much time writing about every week of Jesus' life, I mean, truly, it would exhaust all the papyrus that they would have had at the time. And so I don't think he's exaggerating at all when he says, I wouldn't have enough papyrus to write on. I really don't think that he's exaggerating. I think he's being literal when he says that. So this takes up an extent of the Gospel writings, and then they think that on that Sunday night, he spent the night in Bethany, but we know that he at least came from Bethany and Bethpage. Now, Bethany means house of the poor, while Bethpage comes from 2 different Greek words meaning the place of the fig. So it's thought that Bethany was like a place that people, it was almost like government assisted housing. It was places that people who couldn't afford a lot of money, didn't have a lot of money or afford nice houses, they would go to Bethany and live in a cheaper neighborhood, and then Bethpage would have been known for the figs that they have made. And Jesus is coming from there, going, and he's going to walk up or down to Jerusalem. I believe that he's actually on the ascent, and then the Jordan River is actually, Jordan means descent. So it's descending into Jerusalem, but I think he would be on the opposite side of that, so he would have been ascending up to Jerusalem. But nevertheless, when we get through Sunday, we look at Monday. So what happens on Monday? He leaves Bethany, and that's when he curses the fig tree. I don't remember exactly the details of where this is found in the Gospel, but he's walking up through a place, and he sees a fig tree, and he wants something to eat from it. And the figs, although they look like they're fruitful and good, he takes a bite, and it's rotten. It's no good, it's sour. So he curses the fig tree, and then they go and they clear the temple. And he says, you turned my father's house into a den of thieves. And Jesus has a righteousness type of anger about his father's house. It's not been treated the way that he thinks that it should be. And he's right on for that. So he makes a whip, and he just shakes it at people, and people just run out of the temple. And then he goes back, and as he comes back, he passes that same fig tree. And the disciples are like, hey, Jesus, I remember you said the fig tree, it was supposed to wither and die. And look, here it is. So that's proof. Here's what that is that's proof that sometimes Jesus declares things in our life that does not happen immediately. So Jesus declared the fig tree cursed. He spent that next day in the temple, and then as he's coming back, they look upon the fig tree, and now it's withered all up. So there are some times that God speaks things in our life that take time to occur. So just think on that. And then we get to Tuesday, and what happens on the Tuesday, what's most likely, it's the Olivet Discourse. And I don't know too much about the Olivet Discourse. I've never really studied it, but I believe that you can find that in John chapter 12, verse 20, if you're looking. And then they spend the night in Bethany. And then you get to Wednesday. That's the idea that's called Silent Wednesday, because there's nothing in all of our Gospels that point to Wednesday. No information is given, so to speak, on Wednesday. It's nothing. And so then you kind of skip over Wednesday, and then you get to Thursday. Now, that Thursday before Good Friday, is typically known as Maundy Thursday. Now, it's not Monday Thursday like we would like to think. It's actually Maundy, so it's spelled M-A-U-N-D-Y. And what Maundy means is it's a Latin word, and it just simply means covenant. It's the day that Jesus established a new covenant with his people. Because up until this time, they had been living by the old covenant. And now that he's going to establish in the upper room, when you do this in remembrance of me. I give you a new command. Love one another as you love me. And if you're looking for this, it's going to be Matthew 26, Mark 14, or Luke chapter 22. And it's a little little bit about the last meal that Jesus has, the upper room, the Lord's Supper, so to speak, and as he gives this new Lord's covenant. And then from there, they leave. He has many predictions. He predicts, that they would find the Lord's Supper room, that he would ride on a donkey, that Peter would betray him, that Peter would deny, that Judas would betray him, that his disciples would flee. He would predict the way that he would die and the resurrection and the days that he would spend in the grave. He had many, many predictions leading up until that Good Friday. And as they move from Thursday to Friday, they go to this garden. It's called the Garden of Gethsemane, right past the Mount of Olives. And as they go to the garden, they three people primarily go all the way with them. All the disciples go, but three people, which is, in my way I like to think, it's Jesus' three best friends. Peter, James, and John. And most people don't say best friends, they would just say inner circle. But however you want to say it, those three plus Jesus go all the way into the garden and they begin to pray. And that's kind of, as we go from Thursday to Friday, we're transitioning into a trial session. And they're going to go into Friday with the trial before Annas, who is the high priest. And then we got a trial before the Sanhedrin. And then we have a third trial we have a third trial. I'm not sure where that third trial is. I'm just looking at my notes. I don't really know what I mean when I say third trial. But we know that we have several different trials, like the trial before Annas, the trial before Pilate, the trial before Sanhedrin, the trial before Herod when they did the miracle or they wanted the miracle, and then lastly the final trial before Pilate when he washes his hands. So we know that Jesus was kind of in the middle of the courtroom for the whole day, or for much of the morning at least, on Friday, Thursday night into Friday. And remember, the Jewish day isn't like our days. Our days typically start in the morning, go to the evening. Their day would have been opposite. Theirs would have started Thursday night and into Saturday morning. That would be their day. So you have to have that mindset when you get into the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday. Because if Jesus was going to be dead for 3 days, and we know that he went on the cross at about 1-ish, he would have died about 3 o'clock, and then the curtain would have been torn. He would have been in the grave we know that Joseph of Arimathea tried to get him in the grave by 6, because on the next day was Passover, and you couldn't work on Passover. That's why Joseph of Arimathea ran to Pilate, asked permission, got the body down, and put it into that garden tomb. Well, that may have not been that whole Friday, but it was surely some part of Friday. Now why? Because the days were different than our days were. Instead of that being Thursday night like we would think of it, that would be Friday morning, or the opposite. Instead of being Saturday night, that would have actually been Friday morning, because their days are opposite. So he was in the grave for maybe an hour or 2 at the most, probably, on that Friday, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning it would have been when he would have risen from the dead, when he would have rose up. So that's kind of how the timeline works there. But he did have 7 sayings on the cross, and I just want to share these with you. He said, "Father, forgive them." He said, "Today be with me in paradise." He said, "Woman, behold my son." And then the darkness fell. We know it fell at 3 p.m., so that's why we think he died at 3 o'clock. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Remember? He said, "I'm thirsty." So he got the sour sponge. He said, "It is finished," which in Greek would have been tetelestai. And then he finally, "Into your hands I'll lift my spirit." So those are the 7 sayings that Jesus would have said on the cross. And then, as you know, he passed away, stayed in the grave, and would have been risen on that Sunday morning. So that's a little bit about kind of what that week looks like. And I know this was a long video, and I know I haven't posted in a while. I'm sorry for all of those of you who follow us that are not from around here. We had an amazing young man who passed away this week, and it's been tough on everybody. So anyways, continue to pray the Moore family. So if you would keep them in your prayers, not only for today and tomorrow, but just in the weeks, months, and years to come. So, anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning in. And like I said, I'm going to finish all 1 Corinthians. I'll post a bunch of videos in the next couple of hours. So just kind of, you don't have to watch them all. If you want to watch a couple, you surely can. Or if any chapters stand out to you, you can kind of go look those up. But it'd be something for you to always come back to in the years to come if you want to study 1 Corinthians. So it may help you down the road as well. But anyways, until later.